Hey, CJN podcast listeners, Michael Fraiman here, executive producer. I wanted to share that the CJN has earned 6 Simon Rock Hour Awards this month, the Jewish Pulitzers, as some folks call them. We took home awards for magazine writing and design, and for feature stories on a Holocaust music project, BDS on Canadian campuses, and 4 women who discovered they were sisters in their golden years, thanks to 23andMe. But we can't create award-winning journalism without your help. If you value independent Jewish journalism, please consider supporting us today at thecjn.ca/donate.
I was determined to take all that anger and pain and heartbreak and channel it and harness it into ambition, fearless, relentless ambition to prove them wrong.
What drives someone to become Canada's first openly gay judge, a best-selling author twice, a celebrity interviewer, and now the subject of a Hollywood movie? Retired Ontario Court Justice Harvey Brownstone says the answer goes back to one of the most painful moments of his life. At 19, after coming home from university and telling his parents he was gay, they cut him off emotionally and financially. They didn't speak to him for 5 years. Brownstone was their only child. His mother was a Holocaust survivor. She owned a women's fashion boutique in Hamilton, where his adoptive father ran the city's Jewish Community Center. Now, half a century later, Brownstone has written about that experience in his best-selling memoir, Without Prejudice, My Life as a Gay Judge, released just before his 70th birthday this past week. In it, he explains how years of rejection from his parents, classmates, employers, and even parts of the justice system became the fuel for a remarkable career, helped along the way by mentors, including retired Supreme Court of Canada Justice Rosalie Abella.
Everything I did, when I look back, was about getting my parents' approval and acceptance and make them proud of me. It never stopped. It's part of your DNA. It's built in you.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Monday, July 27th. Welcome to North Star, the flagship podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, made possible through the generous support of the Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin Charitable Foundation. Just 38, Brownstone was among the youngest judges appointed to the Ontario Court of Justice, and he became Canada's first openly gay judge. And during 26 years on the bench, first in the criminal courts and later in family court, he presided over thousands of cases involving people struggling with rejection, poverty, and loneliness. Themes Brownstone knew personally from growing up gay in the 1960s and 70s. He also officiated more than 1,000 same-sex weddings, including the Toronto marriage of American activists Edith Windsor and Thea Spire. Their legal fight helped pave the way for marriage equality in the United States. After retiring from the bench 5 years ago, Brownstone returned to his first love, show business, and today his online interview series reaches millions of viewers around the world each month. So how has readers' reaction to his memoir surprised him? Harvey Brownstone joins me from his home in Grimsby, Ontario. Harvey, welcome back to the Canadian Jewish News North Star podcast.
Thank you so much, Ellen. It's a pleasure to be here.
What has the reception been like since the book came out for you?
Well, the reception has been phenomenal. I didn't realize that my story would resonate with so many people in such a profound way. So I'm absolutely thrilled.
But what surprised you or pleased you the most about some of these reactions?
I think what surprises me the most is how the theme of parental rejection, which is so prominent in the book, has really resonated with so many people who were not gay, but they also dealt with feeling unloved or unaccepted by their parents because of career choices or choice of partners or choice of lifestyle or political views. That really surprised me. There's a lot of people out there in pain because they didn't feel good enough because of their parents' attitudes towards them. It's heartbreaking.
You have talked about a lot of people who encountered you in your life, your career in the judiciary and in other places. And, you know, some of them you didn't pull any punches when you talked about them in your book. But have you heard from any of those people?
No, I have not heard from anyone I referred to in the book, not yet. I certainly didn't pull punches. I stand behind everything I said in the book. I spoke the truth, and those people know it. And all I have heard is that there are some rumblings within the judiciary about the book. Some people are not pleased with my critique of the criminal and family court system. Some people feel that it's unseemly, even after you're retired, to speak out in the way I did particularly about my failed bid to become Chief Justice. But I will tell you, Ellen, I have heard from dozens of judges, both from my court and other courts in Canada, who fully support the book and stand behind me and beside me.
Look, let's go back in time. Why did you want to write it at this stage in your career and life, turning 70 in 2 days?
There was two major reasons why I wrote the book. The first was because I think there are a lot of people out there who have endured similar things to me: bullying, parental rejection, discrimination, and professional jealousy. And I think the coping mechanisms and the strategies that I developed to overcome those obstacles were things that I felt would help people, that I could share. And the second reason is because I do think it's time that somebody who's been on the inside of the justice system speak honestly and earnestly about the flaws in the system. It's time somebody speaks out and tells the public the truth, what I think they need to know.
You know, you say it so calmly about all the trauma that you endured. Even let's talk about, family life and personal life. Writing the book, did this dredge it all up again for you? How did you navigate that?
It was a process of taking myself back there. I put myself in a zone where I had to recreate and live it through again. All the conversations, all of those episodes. In order to take the reader with you, you have to do that. You can't just give an exposition. You have to really describe exactly what happened. It was a 3-week process. It really was quite emotional. It wasn't fun, but I had to do it. I wanted to do it quickly to get it out of me. And then once I had the book all written, then I went back and I polished it and I edited it. But those 3 weeks were very intense.
Can we talk a bit about growing up in Hamilton in a very Jewish environment? Rabbi Baskin, the beloved late rabbi of the city, is part of your people who you dealt with through your bar mitzvah and going to shul. How did being in such a Jewish environment influence why you tried not to sort of explore or accept your early feelings about being gay?
Well, I don't think I'm different than any other gay person of my generation. It wouldn't matter what religion you are. When you're growing up in the 60s, no one talked about it. There were no role models. Being Jewish wasn't helpful or unhelpful. There simply was no way to have the guts to admit publicly what I was, even though I think I knew by the time I was about 8 or 9 or 10 years old. Certainly the kids on the playground knew and had me pegged for a faggot and a sissy and a queer. I didn't even know what those words meant. And the same thing happened when I went to Sunday school at the temple. You mentioned Rabbi Baskin. He was a lovely man. He married my parents. He bar mitzvahed me. But there was no protection for kids that were bullied. It wouldn't matter. It didn't matter where you were. And so I knew that being attracted to other boys was going to be a problem. I knew that I should never admit it. I hoped and prayed it would go away. And it was not something that was ever referred to in a Jewish context. If someone in the Jewish community had said, it's okay, you can be who you are and we're still going to love and accept you, but nobody did. And so my Jewish identity as a child, I saw that I was part of a very important community because of my dad being the director of the JCC, but I certainly got no comfort from that when it came to my sexuality, nor did it have the effect of suppressing me any more than I already suppressed myself.
And you mentioned Rabbi Baskin. How did he influence your career choice?
He was one of the first people that recognized that I would be a good lawyer. He saw that I had a big mouth, that I was opinionated, that I had the kind of confidence as a child. Even though I was made fun of, I still had this sense that I knew how to talk, I knew how to advocate, I knew how to demonstrate personality. And he did tell me, you should definitely go into law. You've got the personality to win. You know, you'd be good in a courtroom.
Is it true you never lost a criminal trial that you were litigating?
I never lost a trial, ever. I understood from a very early time that what really happened in a case doesn't matter. It's what you can prove that matters. And the art of persuasion, of delivering the evidence in such a way that you negate what the other side is doing, making submissions that actually keep the judge and the jury awake.
When you were at high school and you knew that you were going off to university, the bullying stopped, physical bullying. Then in university, there were other challenges. I want to ask you why you decided you needed to tell your parents. You needed to come out, and you were 19.
I have asked myself that question a million times, Ellen. Not only that question, but why then? Why did I do it then? The simple answer is I was an only child. They were the only people in the world who loved me. I finally understood what it was about me that made me so different. I was bursting with a need to tell them so that they would understand me better too. I thought they knew. I mean, if all those kids on the playground knew that I was gay, how could my own parents not know? And even though I knew they'd be upset, I mean, listen, I was a Jewish kid. My parents talked nonstop about how they couldn't wait to see me get married and have and give them grandchildren. I wasn't deaf to all that.
Pressure.
I didn't think that my mother would react as horribly as she did. I misjudged her. That's the truth. If I had it to do again, I would have told them, but not while I was financially dependent on them. That was the big mistake.
Are you suggesting that young people who want to come out to their parents be careful because you don't want them to have the same horrible experience you did? Sort of figure it out when it's appropriate?
100% yes. And I do. Whenever I've been asked by young people whether they should come out to their parents, my answer is always don't do it if you're financially dependent on them. Don't take that chance, because I was descended into hell after my parents cut me off. I really went through hell until I finally graduated and got a job, and I would not wish that on anybody.
Tell us a story or two about what you had to face. A lot of kids who go through university have financial hardships.
Well, I tried to get a student loan, but back in 1975, if your parents could afford to support you and were refusing to, you could only get a student loan if they signed a form saying that they were refusing to support you, which my parents would not do. Because my mother's position was, we're not refusing to support you. But when you stop being a homosexual and come to your senses, then we will support you. So I had to get a scholarship from Queen, and I also went on student welfare. I lived in residence, but my living expenses, my meals, my food, that I had to get by working. So I worked cleaning people's houses, and I got jobs in fast food places, and I learned how to type so I could type my friends' essays. And I also I went to restaurants, made friends with the gay waiters, and got them to save me some food at the end of the night that was going to be thrown out. And it was really hard. I tried the Jewish community, and there was a synagogue in Kingston, as I went to Queens, and I did get invited for Shabbos dinners a lot. Everybody who had a daughter my age invited me. I hate to think of how disappointed those girls were, but I did get some great meals on Friday nights, but that was the extent of the help I got.
I read your book about being underestimated by professors and by other people was a huge motivator in your life. And I had the similar experience, not for sexuality, but my principal told me I would never amount to anything. because I wouldn't dissect a fetal pig in biology class. And then my journalism professor said I would never amount to anything. It was a whole thing. But I ended up wanting to prove them wrong. And I have over these years. So I just wanted to just say thank you for saying these things. And I'm wondering, now that you're looking back on it, at what point did your actual success make that motivation no longer valid and start being about how you're happy now and you did it for yourself?
Well, first of all, I'm stunned that anybody could have ever told you you wouldn't amount to anything, Ellen. I think you are one of the heroes of our community and in the journalistic community. You're a superstar in my eyes, and shame on anybody that would tell you that you aren't going to be a huge success. That's number one. Number two, you are so right when you say that rejection is a very powerful motivator, because it started with my parents. I was determined to take all that anger and pain and heartbreak and channel it and harness it into ambition, fearless, relentless ambition to prove them wrong and to be someone, a mensch, a professional success, and someone they didn't have to be ashamed of, someone they would be proud of. Then, of course, when the professors at law school, and it wasn't all of them, but some would say things like, it's too bad you're openly gay because you're a good student. You would probably make a good lawyer, but nobody's ever going to hire you. That also, it hurt, but I was determined to prove them wrong. I saw a lot of gay people in my generation who turned that negativity into self-loathing, and they self-medicated with alcohol and drugs. And I knew more than a few who committed suicide. It's very painful to be rejected, to be told you're not good enough and you'll never amount to anything. And so I was determined I wasn't going to be that person. I did contemplate suicide, and it's in the book, but once I got over that and I realized, no, I'm going to prove them all wrong. Now, you asked a really interesting question. When did it stop being about that? The truth is it didn't, because once you were in that mode of trying to always prove, then, graduating top of my class in law school, that wasn't good enough. Being a good lawyer, that wasn't good enough. I had to win every case. Then that wasn't good enough. I had to become a judge. And at 38 years old, that happened. And then that wasn't good enough. I wrote a book. And then I got a television show. And everything I did, when I look back, was about getting my parents' approval and acceptance and make them proud of me. It never stopped. It's part of your DNA. It's built in you.
Well, now you're getting a Hollywood movie and you have a best-selling book, and it's not still, those little voices are still there. I hope not for the rest of your next step.
No, once I became a judge and my mother finally let go of the shame, because in her mind, if the government was prepared to make her son a judge, then I guess being gay can't be all that terrible, because look what just happened. And so that part disappeared. I finally made her proud. I shouldn't have had to work that hard to make it happen, but boy, it was a great feeling when it did.
I want to talk about your mother. When she realized that you got sort of the approval, the kudos from society and the premier and all this thing and the attorney general, did that free you from being rejected by them?
That's a really good question. I think I made peace with my mother when I developed the maturity. After we reconciled, I invited my parents to my law school graduation because I wanted them to see that I'd made it. And that began, after a 5-year period of no contact, that began a process of getting closer. We didn't talk about me being gay, but we kept our conversations focused on my career, not my personal life, and certainly not being gay. But over time, my mom got prouder and prouder and prouder of me. And I began to understand her pain, that she had survived the Holocaust. She was a hidden child in France, and she had grown up she was a product of her generation. And I had to accept that she did the best she could with the information she had, and that there was pain for her too. She only had one child. She felt that people would blame her for having a gay child. And
Because she was in the fashion industry and things like that? She was very
and because she was a
nothing?
typical Jewish mother and very overprotective, and because she was in the fashion industry, and I think she believed a lot of the myths out there about how how a boy becomes gay. And I developed a lot of compassion for both my parents. I think they did the best they could. And you don't forgive for the person, you forgive for yourself so you can let go. And so it was an easy thing to forgive my mom. She made it up to me 10 times over. We had 20 good years after I became a judge before she passed away. And she more than made up for what she had put me through. I think she was genuinely sorry and tried everything to be the most supportive, openly supportive mom of a gay person that one could ever hope for. So it was easy to forgive both her and my dad.
Coming up, the one question no interview had asked him until now about his mother. This brings us to the part of your life with the group Chutzpah, which was a sort of an advocacy group for Jewish people in the gay community, trying to find room in the mainstream Toronto Jewish community. Can you look back on the work you had to do to get not just your mother and father, but even Holy Blossom and other synagogues in the mainstream community to realize that there were other families living your life with rejection?
Well, it's very interesting you say that, because Canada is so progressive that we don't need separate gay Jewish groups anymore, because we have been so beautifully accepted into the mainstream. But my involvement started in the 80s. And that was during the AIDS epidemic. And at that time, there were a lot of lesbian and gay Jewish people who had been rejected by their families. It was very common, particularly Orthodox Jews. Their families had sat shiva for them. So there was a group called Chutzpah that I became involved with because I wanted some connection to the Jewish community. And we were a big group. I eventually became president. When the AIDS epidemic started happening and there were a number of our members dying with no families at all, there was a hospice called Casey House in Toronto. They would contact us whenever a Jewish person that was gay died, and we'd need to arrange a funeral. We had the money to pay for a plot and to pay a rabbi, but we couldn't get a rabbi, and that was why I contacted Holy Blossom. Rabbi Marmer was unhelpful. He said if they weren't members of Holy Blossom, that he couldn't, they weren't running a charity and he couldn't make himself available. And he then said something that I can still hear echoing in my head today, and it still makes my blood boil. He said, well, thankfully, this isn't such a big issue in our community. Thank God we don't have a lot of gay Jews. And I said, what? You have no idea. We have a huge group and you have a huge congregation. You don't think that there's people at Holy Blossom who have gay kids, who have homosexuality in their families? And he said, no. And I said, I can prove it. You host an event at Holy Blossom for parents and family members of gay people, and you're going to see the crowd that's going to show up. And he said, fine, I'll do it, but I don't think that there'll be many people there. Well, the event was jam-packed. He was dumbfounded, and to his credit, he gave a very passionate speech, apologizing. And that evening was so monumental because one person after another got up and gave a very emotional presentation about how embarrassed and isolated they had felt, that they weren't able to ever tell anybody that they had a gay kid. And the rabbi was so moved, and that led to the beginning of a social action committee that dealt with parents and families of gay people. I was very proud as a member of Chutzpah. Together had penetrated the mainstream community. And over the years, it got better and better. I will say that the late Rabbi Bielfeld from Temple Emmanuel,
obituary at Temple Emmanuel, right?
He was the one that performed all of our funerals for free. And Temple Emmanuel hosted many chutzpah events. May God rest his soul. Olav Sholem to Rabbi Bielfeld. He was way ahead of his time. he really supported chutzpah, and so did his congregation.
Some people in the gay community have told me to ask you this, which is our lifestyle is alternative. We don't need to be accepted.
First of all, I don't believe them. I've never met a gay person ever who didn't want to be accepted by the mainstream. That's just baloney. That's why we have same-sex marriage. We could have had domestic contracts or some other invention, but if you want to be truly accepted, then you want to have the same rights and privileges as everyone else. And secondly, we didn't want to create our own synagogues. I know a lot of gay communities did. We in Canada wanted to be part of the Jewish community. We'd been rejected by our families for something we had no control over, and we didn't like it. Even if you don't agree with same-sex marriage, and I remember people during that era saying, why are we aiming so low? Marriage is such a failed institution. The reason is because we want the right to make the same mistakes as everybody else. That's what equality is.
How many same-sex marriages do you know that you officiated once it became legal in 2003 in Ontario?
I never kept count, but it was well over 1,000. I know that. Most of them were American couples. There was a good 5 to 7 year period where Toronto was the #1 travel destination for gay couples from the States because they came up to Toronto to get married because Ontario had no residency requirements. So it was a lot. I did a lot of weddings. It was very nice when you're sitting in family court dealing with people who hate each other. It's such a toxic environment. And there I was doing 5 weddings a day with people who loved each other, who wanted to be together. It was very healing. It was really freilach.
Well, you mentioned the institution of marriage. So is it okay if I ask if and when you got married?
I got married to my partner, Morty, in 2006.
Who did your wedding?
A judge.
Not a rabbi.
No, we didn't get married by a rabbi because it wasn't the religions that gave us our rights. It was the courts. And out of respect for the institution of the court, we wanted to get married by a judge, by a colleague.
I know that in your book, you said you're with your current partner for 10 years. Is that the same person?
No. Unfortunately, my relationship with Morty didn't last. But now I'm with another wonderful Jewish guy by the name of Steve, and we've been together 10 years.
Married?
No, not yet.
Your outspokenness in this book, it's kind of like the Hankett Zinga book when it talks about systemic anti-Semitism in the Toronto police. Your book is naming names and talking about what a mess it is to bring warring families and custody battles in family court. And if the Chief Justice called you now and said, come and fix this, what would you do if you had like an hour to tell them what to do?
Well, the first thing I would do is tell them to read my book and to read my first book, Tug of War, which even dealt in more detail with the family court system. The second thing I would do is bring together a group of experts in child development, in social work, in psychology, as well as in law, and create a therapeutic system. Nobody ever wants to say it publicly until I did, which is that family court is too adversarial. It's based on winning and losing. And in family law, there is no winning. There's only degrees of losing, and the biggest losers are the children. So I would advocate for a system that provides a therapeutic approach. And so I would create a very different system that doesn't involve affidavits that are designed to hurt and create World War III. I used to tell parents in my court, you're going to be walking that child down the aisle 20 years from now. Your kids expect you to do that. You may hate each other, but your children expect you to be there for them no matter what happens in their lives, to be at graduations, to be at weddings, or God forbid, to be at bad events. And so you have to be able to be businesslike with each other. And that doesn't happen after a very toxic court case. I saw it for 26 years, and it's wrong.
You also had a mentor in another famous, much more famous, high-profile Jewish justice, Justice Rosalie Abella. How did she mentor you, and how does she continue to be part of your life?
Rosie was a guardian angel. In the summer before third-year law, I got myself a job as a clerk at the family court on Jarvis Street in Toronto, and she was a family court judge. And she took a liking to me. She saw that I had an aptitude for family law. We would talk about her cases, and one day she said to me, you know, you're like a big human question mark. You never talk about your life or your family or anything about you. So I don't know what got into me, but I said, I'm gay and my parents threw me out. And she said, what? This is ridiculous. I said, well, my mother's a Holocaust survivor and she feels that somehow me being gay is a slap in the face to what she went through. And Rosie, I thought she was going to explode. She said, now you're pushing some serious buttons here. My parents are Holocaust survivors and they should know better than anybody that you don't throw your children in the garbage. I'm phoning your mother. I thought I was going to die. I said, Rosie, you don't know what you're dealing with. My mother is really a tough cookie. And she said, you don't know my mother. Anyway, she phoned my mother and put the phone on speakerphone. So I heard. My mother let her have it, but good, real good, and said, how many kids do you have? And she said, I have 2 boys. And she said, well, I hope it happens to you. Let's see how you react. Anyway, then she hung up on Rosie and Rosie turned to me and said, Harvey, you win. Your mother takes the cake. And then she said, listen to me. You don't need her. You don't need anybody. I'm telling you, you're going to be a great lawyer. I'm never wrong about these things. And if you keep working hard and keep believing in yourself, I think you're going to be a judge one day. Well, I thought she was nuts. I mean, I was being told by professors I'd never get a job by any law firm. And here she's telling me about being a judge. But I stayed in touch with her and she was always very encouraging. And when I called her to tell her I was going to be appointed to the judiciary, she said, you see, I told you so.
And she also became a Supreme Court justice. You didn't make it to the pinnacle of your court that you wanted to be, which is Chief Justice, because of some smear campaigns and other sort of whispers, I guess, about your candidacy.
I was asked to put my name forward for Chief Justice of our court because I was known to be an innovator. I had also presided in family and criminal court, which no other chief of our court has ever done.
And bilingual, fully bilingual.
And I was bilingual. Honey, I'm by everything, but never mind. I put my name forward for chief, and then I got a call from Christy Blatchford, who was a journalist at the National Post.
She rest in peace. Yeah.
And she said to me, Harvey, I've been approached by several of your colleagues who are very concerned you're going to become a judge because they think you're a disruptive influence. And they're worried that an openly gay premier, Kathleen Wynne, is going to appoint an openly gay Chief Justice, you. And I want you to know this article is coming. Well, the article came out. It had the exact effect that my detractors wanted it to have because I think, and I'd never had any contact with Kathleen Wynne or anyone in her circle, but it became clear to me through the grapevine that the government felt that if the other judges were saying, oh, look, he's only going to get it because he's gay and she's gay, then the public is going to think the same thing. And so I didn't get the job. It upset me terribly because I had dealt with homophobia my whole life from straight people. Now a gay person is in charge and I'm being told, well, you can't get the job because you're gay. So you can't win.
You talked about Hollywood. Let's move to a happier story. David Arquette, the actor from Scream and former Courtney Cox ex, playing you. Did you choose him? How did that match happen?
He plays Harvey the judge. The younger Harvey is played by David Mazouz. He was the star of a TV show called Gotham. He played the young Batman, Bruce Wayne. He's a Sephardic Jew, 24 years old. And then there's a very young Harvey, the child, who's bullied in the playground, another young Jewish boy, Asher Alexander. So David Arquette, to answer your question, I had control over the screenplay. I did not have control over the casting. And I will tell you that my eyebrows raised significantly when I was told that David Arquette would play me because I knew him. He's been on my interview program and I couldn't see him being Harvey. I was pleasantly surprised, though. I was on set. I was required contractually to be on the set the whole time in Nashville where they filmed it. And I had many long conversations with him and David Mazouz. And I'm very pleased with both of their performances.
There's always the hovering question over the choice of actors in terms of representation and authentic representation. So having a Jewish person play a Jewish person, have a gay person, they are not gay. Are you okay with that?
I wouldn't pretend to pass any comment on the sexual preferences of anyone. I can only tell you that I believe an actor is an actor and that you don't have to be gay to play a gay person. That's what acting is about.
You started off as a young man loving sitcoms, watching TV. And as we come to the next stage of your career, this is what you're living now as a famous celebrity interviewer. And I'm wondering what you took from being a judge that makes you such a good interviewer now.
The answer to my success, I think, is the fact that my interviewing skill is based on my examination-in-chief style, which came from the courtroom. I spent a career asking questions and doing research, and I realized quickly that although I love pop culture, I don't want to interview stars and ask them what everybody else has asked them. You know, Lucille Ball's daughter, Lucy Arnaz, is tired of being asked what it was like being Lucille Ball's daughter. So my modus operandi was to do a whole lot of research and ask them things that nobody else has asked them. And that's what got me an audience. It got me a reputation in Hollywood. It made stars want to come on the show because they were curious to see what I would find out about their careers and ask them about. That same style in the courtroom is what I use on my show.
Speaking of what questions you don't like to ask celebrities, you've done a zillion interviews now about your book. What is the question that you haven't been asked yet and that I didn't ask you that you wish somebody would have asked you? Here's our chance to finally get it out there.
You know, the question I thought people would ask that nobody has, what do you think your mom would say about the book if she was still around? Or what would your mother think of the movie? Because you can imagine, my mother is played by Rachel Lefevre, who's a Jewish-French-Canadian actress. So I'll tell you, I believe my mom would be okay with the book. She was sorry for what she did, and she wouldn't want it to happen to anybody else. And I really do believe this, that she would, even though she's obviously portrayed especially in the movie, in a way that does not make you like her, I think she would accept that this was a very important life lesson for her and that her story is an important one for people to know so that they don't ever do this to their kids. So that's the answer to the question I finally got asked. Thank you.
What would you tell 19-year-old Harvey Brownstone now that you've finished the memoir and you're talking about all this stuff?
I would have told Harvey Brownstone that all of the pain he's experiencing is going to end up being useful in making me an empathetic person, in helping me develop ambition and to achieve something in my life. Because I'm the first to admit, if I had not been rejected, I think I would have been another spoiled upper middle class kid. I think that I would tell Harvey that life is going to get a lot better and that I'm going to get the last laugh, that success is the best revenge.
We'll end it there. We can't wait to have you back when the movie comes. And thank you again for really an important message.
Oh, thank you, Ellen, so much for giving me the best interview ever.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounded like for this episode of North Star, made possible by Ira Gluskin and Maxine Granovsky-Gluskin's Charitable Foundation. You can check out the links in our show notes to watch Harvey's interviews with Hollywood stars and to learn more about him and buy his book. The website is Harvey Brownstone Interviews. To send a personal note to me or Harvey, you can write to us at info@thecjn.ca. Our show is produced by Zachary Kauffman and Izzie Helenchilde, with Michael Fraiman as the executive producer and Alicia Richler, the editorial director of the CJN. Thanks so much for listening.